Well, best laid plans and all that. I've got this squared up much better than it was previously, but in the process the meter window housing has popped off completely. So I'll have the fun of getting that reseated. First off, I've got to go and find a replacement window for this thing, so I'll do that. So here I have a polycarbonate replacement. This is something that I made myself some time ago. I did a run of them. Pop out that ugly broken one. Now they're staked in. There's a thin wall protruding down here, and that's staked over to keep the plastic in place. So where each of those little stakes are, where each of those little pieces of blurred over metal are, I've got to push them back up straight or break them out of the way completely so that my new piece of plastic can sit down seated correctly, and then I can stake it in place in turn. So that's my task, is to all of these little pieces of metal where that metal is staked over, I've got to push them back down out of the way. It's a bit hard on the screwdrivers. And I'm sure in the factory they would have had a specially prepared punch that would have automatically staked over those little areas automatically all at once. Of course I don't have anything like that, and I'm just going to have to make multiple punch marks myself. One there. I'll just see if I can press my window into there now. Of course I've got a protective plastic film on each side of this piece of plastic. I've got to peel that off before I push this into place. But at least it's polycarbonate, so it means that it's relatively robust, certainly more so than the acrylic or whatever it was that they used for the original windows. Yes, doesn't really want to fit that well. Let's see if I can get those pieces of blurred over metal pushed back a bit better. It's not a brilliant design as far as windows over meters are concerned, because the button for setting the meter comes up in the middle of the plastic window, which means that when people put their big fat thumb on it to press the button down, they're applying a lot of pressure to the window itself as well. So inevitably some of them are pushed right in. Well, I think that will go. Oh, it's all but. Right, I'll bring you back once I've got that seated. Well, that part went very well. We have a nice new unblemished window there. Now I have to get that fitted into the top cover, which is as much a task again. So basically that was staked into the top cover in much the same way. The little edges visible on that piece there where it's been pushed over to crimp it in to this top cover. I've got to get it back into position. Wish me luck. Well, I've run out of time to finish this job today. I expected to get it done, but it wasn't to be. The top cover's cleaned up quite well. I still got to do the rangefinder for this, but you can see that the rest of the camera is complete. The top cover looks quite good. That sharp dent that was visible at this point, I was able to get that out. So we still have the scratch along the top, but because it's not dented in at that place, it doesn't look anywhere near as obtrusive as when it was a sharp crease in the metal. You can see that the meter window is nice and clear. You got a nice clear plastic window there now. Everything else is back in place, nice clean windows. Leatherettes are all good. Nameplate on the front. Tomorrow I've got to do that rangefinder and get it sorted. Alright, time to start on this rangefinder at long last. So first I have to dismantle it a bit for cleaning. So I need to remove the arm. Sometimes this can be achieved with a pair of stiff tweezers, and it can in this case. Take off the screw and the wavy washer, lift the arm off, pop those to one side. We have the body of the rangefinder. We can start by taking this screw out. That one does our parallax correction in the finder. Take out these two screws. Lift off this arm, which is also part of that parallax correction stuff. Here we have the little screen that does our different frame size markings and the parallax correction. It's held on with a clamp here with two small screws. It's also locked in place with a couple of spots of lacquer. I need to loosen those screws. And I should be able to lift this whole frame assembly out There it is. Now this construction is riveted together. The little bracket can be removed if it needs to be, but that's moving quite freely. The rest of it's riveted together. It cannot be taken apart. Or not without looking at an awful lot of trouble. To this piece, you see that our front surface mirror is no longer, it's usually locked in place with a touch of lacquer here originally. That lacquer has been broken, so that slides around a bit. And the shield is just pushed back a little bit. That's fine, that won't cause us any problems. It doesn't need to be locked in position, it's not going to cause an issue. At the top of the finder, I see that this screw is somewhat scarred up and the hole behind it is somewhat marked. Now this is where you would adjust the position of this bracket, which would change the tilt of the semi-silvered mirror, and that would have the effect of changing the vertical alignment of your images. But it's really touchy. It's really hard to make your adjustments at that point, and typically I wouldn't unless I needed to, unless I had thought that was out. I'm going to leave that entirely alone and hope to make any vertical alignment adjustments at this piece instead, which I'll show you later. I can see that that's at the limit of its travel, so it may well be that I'm going to have to do a lot of mucking around. We're going to take off the rear lens, or the eyepiece lens, for cleaning. And that strips down our rangefinder as much as it needs to be stripped down to go into the ultrasonic cleaner. First I'll use some naphtha and clean the grease from here and here that's visible, so that that's not contaminating the solution I'm cleaning things in. And I'm having a look at this semi-silvered mirror at the front here. The front surface of course is plain glass. That can be cleaned with a cotton bud to remove that fairly obvious deposit of haze on there and dust particles. The inner surface is surface silvered, and I can tell you that that silver is very fine, easily wiped away. I'm not going to physically touch that inside surface with a cotton bud. It won't take me anywhere that I really want to go. So I'll clean this outside surface, the front surface, and I'll do that first so that I'm not having to clean the whole piece for an excessive length of time in the ultrasonic cleaner, because ultrasonic cleaners will remove the silvering from the inside of that glass given time. So I'll clean the outside first so I'm not having to clean it excessively. So to find some naphtha, clean this, and then go and clean this component in the ultrasonic cleaner. Here I'm just cleaning away the remains of old grease from there, and likewise on that slide there where that bracket slides on it. And I'll just wipe a few other surfaces that look a bit grimy. That looks good. I'll clean the front surface of that semi-silvered mirror. And it's worth noting that about 75% of the grime will be on this surface. not on the internal surface or the rearmost surface, because that's not quite so open to the atmosphere. So if I hadn't got an ultrasonic cleaner, I could probably get the vast majority of the result simply by cleaning that accessible surface, and that's made a big difference. I can see through it that there is some haze on the inner surface, but it's by no means particularly marked. That piece now can go through, and I'll clean it in an ultrasonic cleaner. And what I do is I take a small glass, put in a solution of warm water and a little bit of standard dishwashing detergent, just a couple of drops, and I put the glass inside the ultrasonic cleaner, fill up along to the same level with warm water in the ultrasonic cleaner, and place this into the glass so it's completely submerged. I usually give it 3 minutes cleaning. Once it's finished, I rinse this under the hot tap, rinse away any solution that may be still on there, and I blow it down with a little blower, a little puffer, rocket blower, and dry it with a hair dryer, and keep using the blower to make sure that I remove any droplets as it's drying, otherwise they leave coffee rings on your glass and you don't want that. But if you keep blowing away any droplets and you dry it with a hair dryer, that glass will be sparkling and clean, and that's what I'm hoping to achieve. So I'll be back in an instant for you, but in about 5 minutes for me. Here I'm back with my rangefinder all clean, and the glass surfaces look very nice, particularly the semi-silvered glass at this end of the finder. That all looks pretty good, exactly as I'd want it to be. And I can start putting back the components I'd removed. I'll start with putting back the little screen arrangement, and I'm just going to wipe the surface of that very carefully with some glass cleaner, just to make sure that I remove that dust that's sitting on that surface. That's fine. That can be slotted back in place. Now there's a very fine spring which operates to hold that piece downwards, and that is, just got to get that in position. Hook it into place. That's fine. Alright, I want to get this so that the front surface is level with the front of the frame here at this point. Just snug those screws up very lightly. That looks good. If you don't get it level, your frames in the finder won't be level, and you won't like that. That looks good. I'm just going to put a touch of clear lacquer on those points to stop that from shifting. That's all that's required. Our levers, I'll need to just clean those and make sure that the any old grease is removed, and I'll put a very slight touch of molybdenum on those. So I need to clean those components, and I'll do that on this piece of plastic. Normally I'd do that on a paper towel, but the paper towel will be white and the camera automatically adjusts for the exposure, and then everything else will look quite dark on the white paper towel, but the camera will be doing its best to make 18% Kodak grey. Well, there wasn't much to come off on that. That was comparatively clean anyway. These components need to run quite freely because the forces imparted by the return spring in particular are very small. So all I did there was give a little, very little wipe of molybdenum on those slots there. This component, that pin picks up a slot in the front of that frame we put on there. So I've got to get that in position. There it is. These shouldered screws, there are 3 of them. They're identical. 2 do the sliding part. One does the lever that moves that sliding part. Snug those up. Check that as I slide that, the frame moves up and down. That seems good. This lever, the open fork end of that goes to the pivot point for the rangefinder arm, heads in that direction, and the closed slot goes to couple to the arm, couple to that sliding piece. Whoops, let's get you on there. Whenever you have a screw with a comparatively large head relative to the size of the screw, it's hard to stand them up in the hole you're trying to get them to run into. They just want to tip over. That screw, yep, that's running down now. So as the rangefinder coupling arm swings in or out with the focus, it moves this component which then moves this component, and that changes the parallax in the finder, the apparent parallax, so that you see the field of view will shift as you focus closer. That's good. So the rear, the eyepiece glass here needs to go next, and I need to clean that with some glass cleaner. And I'll cheat. I'll put it in the frame upside down, back to front, so it's got the inside surface pointing out, because then the frame will support it while I clean it. And then I'll turn it over and do the outside surface. So I'm just using domestic glass cleaner. You don't need anything fancy. And clean that surface. Now the convex side goes inwards. The outer side is, I think it's flat. If it's not flat, it's almost flat, but it's certainly not convex. There's the little retaining bracket. And we have a single screw that holds that in place. Which I've now managed to drop in and lodge somewhere. There it is. Alright, so the rangefinder is complete now, apart from putting the arm back on it. Now I can see that my return spring here is popped off the top, so we'll just swing that back to where it's supposed to be. I'm just checking the action of this, deciding whether it's as free as that I would expect it to be. I'm watching the action of this under the action of its return spring to see if the return spring makes an obvious difference to the position. In other words, whether the thing is free enough that the spring is strong enough to make a difference. And it does appear to be so. That's good. I can turn my attention to the arm now. This has a split bronze or brass bush in the centre. I'm just going to make a mark on the frame where that split is, so that I can put that bush back in exactly the same place. I'm not convinced that the bush was probably round. There's no reason it should have been machined in anything eccentric or anything, but that it doesn't take much of a shift of your pivot point for things to behave other than as you'd like. So I'll just clean that component and that bush with a bit of naphtha. Put a smear of molybdenum on the inside surface there where that bush will run. I'll pop that bush back in place. Just line up that bush where it started off its life, which was about there. That's good. The underside surface here where it runs against the body of the rangefinder, I'll just give that a little touch of molybdenum, and that's just leaving us like a dirty mark more than anything else. Now I have to clean the glass on this front lens section. I'm just looking at it first. It's got a fingerprint on the front, probably courtesy of me, and it's a bit dusty looking, so it certainly needs to be cleaned. Let's start with the front surface. The front surface is always easiest to get at, and it's easiest to judge when you've got it clean. So once you've got the front surface clean, it's easier to judge how well you're doing cleaning the internal surface. Right, that's good. This can go back on the rangefinder. Now the return string for the rangefinder arm is this thing here, and it runs through a little hole in the frame in this front part here. So I've got to get that spring running through the hole and get the arm swung round and roughly into position, which is there.